Hello, welcome back to IT Landy Nugget course for ADFS. We're still in module 3 around the administration. We spoke earlier about attributes, handling attributes, and claims, stores. But for now, for today, we will be talking about authentication, how we can handle the authentication. Without further ado, let's jump into the authentication. ADFS authenticate users and issue tokens. Authentication may be either single factor, which is a primary authentication, or multi-factor, which is two-factor authentication. Primary authentication is limited to what's supported by AD and or what's supported by the LDAP, authentication feature, which is part of 2016. Again, if you need to read about it, there's a nice information about the LDAP store. For Server 2016, only form-based authentication is supported for authenticating users from LDAP directories. Certificate-based and integrated Windows authentication are not supported for authenticating using LDAP directory. Doesn't mean it doesn't work, but just a quick reminder. Let's jump to the first topic, primary authentication. We mentioned earlier only form-based are supported. For authentication using LDAP directory, certificates are not supported. So primary authentication methods. We have form authentication, we go Windows authentication, intranet only, certificate-based, device authentication, MFA, Microsoft, passport authentication. These are 2016, you can see them, improvement. And we have differentiate between intranet and extranet. Plus we have the intranet forms authentication is used for user agent strings browser, not in Windows integrated authentication supported user agent parameters. Okay, what does that mean for us? Something like this. I did show you this one earlier. We go intranet, extranet, and this is how we can specify the traffic hitting our environment. You see, with the intranet, even when only Windows authentication is checked, form authentication is also active regardless whether it's checked. Form authentication will be used when the user agent string is not WIA supported user agent. When only form authentication is checked, every user will be faced with the form authentication page. Okay? You can see these are the options. Now, Microsoft Passport authentication for Windows 10 devices. Windows 10 introduced Windows Hello and Windows Password for Work. It replaces user password with strong device-bound user credential. User can use PIN, biometric, and gesture like fingerprint and facial recognition, but you will need there's some dependency here. Also, Windows ADFS 2016 supports Microsoft Passport authentication, which allow us to sign in from intranet or extranet using a PIN. Let's just clarify this part of the authentication. Windows 10 devices introduce Windows Hello and Windows Password for Work, which replace password with a strong method of PIN. Again, some disagree, might agree, but again, you can use PIN and with biometrics, like facial recognitions and fingerprints. This is quite common. I've seen it, and it's really useful. And but there are some dependency on the your AD and forest and AD level. They need to be like higher in order to support these methods. If we choose to use multi-factor authentication, then using MFA means that ADFS require an additional authentication factor. ADFS support certificate authentication, third-party provider, and Azure MFA, which is improved in 2016. In the past, Azure MFA integration was possible through installation of MFA server software. That is no longer needed for 2016. 2016 server ADFS has the required component to connect to MFA or Azure MFA out of the box. This is the one. Okay, it's a tick box, you can tick it and specify the required settings. Now, we mentioned we need MFA adapter. So what is the Azure MFA adapter? Windows Server 2016 introduced built-in Azure MFA Adapter. No need to deploy MFA server. The built-in MFA experience is easy to install with Windows 2016. Azure MFA can be configured for Intranet or Extranet as a part of any access control policy. You can use Azure MFA in the primary authentication method. The user will prompt for their username and the one-time password (OTP) code from Azure Authentication app with Azure MFA as a secondary or additional authentication method. Prereq for this: ADFS farm based on Windows Server 2016, Forest level, Azure AD PowerShell. You need Azure AD Premium or EMS subscription, ADFS Federation with a tenant, and global admin right for the installation of the Azure AD Connect, and enterprise admin right for the on-premise for MFA. Steps: you need to launch Windows Azure AD mod, connect MSOL service, enter the credential for the global admin to your tenancy, generate a new certificate for MFA for each server you need. This is the command how to generate it. Cert base 64 and the tenant ID. The certificate will be found in your local machine. The object name or subject name will contain your tenant subscription. The tenant ID, it's a unique unit that represents your AD tenant. To see your tenant ID, all you have to do is connect to Azure using PowerShell and add Azure account, and then your ID should be the column of the output. Add a new certificate to your Azure MFA client, SPN. You can get the X500 certificate and you can convert it, interpretation the certificate and convert it to X509. This is the commandlet, how you can do this. You can get the certificate and convert it, and you set the certificate as a new credential against your Azure MFA client. In order to enable the ADFS server to communicate with the Azure MFA client, you need to add the credential to the SPN for Azure multi-factor authentication client. The certificate generated using the new ADFS Azure MFA client cert, CMD or commandlet, and the commandlet will serve as the credential. You can utilize the PowerShell with a new credential to set up the client SPN. Again, something like this. On each server, we need to run this command, and then you restart the ADFS server after that one. And the commandlet set ADFS MFA tenant ID, and the client ID. Okay. Also, Azure MFA now is available part of the primary authentication method for the intranet. We saw that one earlier. You can tick that tick box, and then you can do the configuration for the authentication method by enabling the adapter, enroll users for MFA, and configure access policy against it. I did show you that one earlier. Either, for example, before I talk about these ones, for Office 365 relaying party, you add a pass-through rule, claim issuance policy to send the claim to 365. Okay. So if you recall, that will be like http schema.microsoft.com claims authentication method, reference to 365 relaying party. You remember I showed this one earlier, where you can create a policy, either grant or deny or permit certain groups or permit anybody or everyone, with a condition, without condition, with MFA, without MFA, internally, externally, extranet, internet. This is how we can enable it for MFA. Let's recap for this section. We have introduced to authentication, choosing either primary or secondary. Primary method authentication with MFA, without MFA. We spoke about implementing multi-factor authentication and some commandlets which are available as well for you, PowerShell, and how you can install the adapter on each server and restarting the servers. That will make the ADFS referencing to MFA. That's all what I had for you for today, and I shall see you in the next part. Goodbye.